Hello folks, it has been roughly a week since the Khazan DLC dropped, and it was met with mixed receptions due to it being very tough to play. But now the dust has settled, I wanted to take a look at just how difficult this new DLC actually is. Before we do, I must admit that I've barely played much of the DLC myself. During my first half an hour of playing, the right bumper button on my control pad did break. It does still work to some extent, but it has made using skills in Khazan quite frustrating. Not to mention I've had a plethora of other videos to work on recently, so until that gets fixed, which will need to be very soon, I won't be getting bent over and shown how much of a dirty little grub I really am. In another, but somewhat more exciting side note, and I should probably add a spoiler warning for the endgame boss here folks, so skip to this point if you'd like. I did stumble across this nice little Reddit post detailing that Khazan does use his DNF ultimate during his last fight against Ozma. I don't know the full details, but it would appear that Khazan is or was a raid boss within DNF, and he had a 3-stage ultimate attack that Nepal have now then designed and included in Khazan's final fight against Ozma. First off, for DNF, we have this leap into the sky animation, which is then followed with a downwards punch. Now, during Ozma's third and final phase, you will have to initiate brutal attacks on Ozma in order to complete the fight, and as you can see, the first of those brutal attacks is a jump, which isn't nearly as high, but this is followed by a downwards punch, and overall it is very similar. If that wasn't convincing enough, then for the second attack during DNF, Khazan does the following: another leap into the air, followed up with throwing a spear, and then manifesting an axe to downward strike with. And then back to the Ozma fight, and for the second brutal attack, we have the exact same as DNF. And of course, for the third and final, in DNF we have a leap, followed with a spear and sword being thrown, and then a huge crash down with the axe. And for Ozma's third and final brutal attack, we have quite literally the exact same. Absolutely sick. A huge shout out to Reddit user OK Sector for discovering this. It's a subtle but fantastic nod to Khazan's origins, and another example of the devs' dedication and love for this game. Now, back to the DLC and it being harder than a sexually aroused block of concrete. There's tons of discussions being made and plenty of opinions floating around, but I think the quickest way of finding out the core truth to the DLC is to simply look at one of the best and see how they've personally matched up against it. For this, we're going to be using none other than the legendary and widely renowned Ong Bal. Now, if you didn't know, then Ong Bal has a long history of completing ridiculously hard challenges in some of the hardest Souls-like games there is. On top of this, he is also the playtester for Lies of P and Khazan, and he is credited in the credits as such. So, Khazan's difficulty can to a large extent be attributed to this one individual's input, opinion, and feedback. Now, with all of that taken into account, this particular hitless run for Khazan's DLC is the first time Ong Bal has taken longer than 2 days to complete this kind of challenge. Now, just let that sink in. Undoubtedly, one of the best ever to pick up any Souls-like game and completely dominate it, and Khazan's DLC was the first obstacle to put up this kind of fight ever. This does confirm that the DLC is unbelievably difficult. However, do bear in mind that Ong Bal was doing a hitless run, so for the average player, it will not be as difficult, but still, this is a challenging mode to say the least. Ong Bal had the following to say about both DLC game modes, which isn't much in all honesty. Personally, I think the DLC is okay. My biggest gripes are all regarding the repetitiveness of leveling, buying gear, allocating skills, etc. But in terms of the difficulty itself, I could see most players getting quite good at either game mode if they were to just persist and be willing to learn each boss. In its current form, however, the DLC does make it tedious and hard to learn, so I do understand why a lot of players are turned off. But for those considering the DLC and a little bit worried about the difficulty, it is very much achievable. Even after just having brawled with Yatuga once or twice, I quickly then made it to Viper, and this was all just 10 or so minutes of having first booted the DLC up. I am half expecting the devs to address the DLC again in the near future, and I had been holding off on this video as a result, but I guess I'll just throw something out if and when they eventually do. Anyway, that is it for this video, folks. I do have a range of guides and news videos on the channel, so do feel free to stop on by and check things out. Otherwise, thanks for watching, folks, and until next time, peace.